The text arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, exactly 17 minutes before David Ross was supposed to cut the ribbon on the Meridian Arts Center. He felt the vibration in his jacket pocket, a subtle pulse against his ribs, while the mayor was mid-sentence, droning on about visionary architecture and community investment, and other phrases that sounded important but meant very little. 200 people had gathered in the October sun for this moment: local press, city council members, architecture students from the university, all of them staring at the building David had spent 3 years designing, a fusion of glass and reclaimed wood, angles that caught light like a prism, a structure that breathed. Structures need breathing room, but they also need support. That's what David always told his clients: space and structure. Freedom and foundation. You couldn't have one without the other. His phone buzzed again. The mayor was still talking, gesturing at the building like he'd designed it himself. David's business partner, Elena, stood beside him, holding the ceremonial scissors, catching his eye with a questioning look. "You okay?" He nodded, but his hand was already reaching for his phone. Around them, the construction site's smell lingered: sawdust and fresh paint, concrete dust that coated everything in a fine white powder. A jackhammer rattled somewhere in the distance, probably the parking garage crew finishing up. The sun beat down on the crowd, unseasonably warm for mid-October, and David could feel sweat beginning to gather at his collar. He pulled out his phone. 2 messages, both from Chloe. "Chloe, I need space. I'm going to the beach house for a while. Chloe, don't call me, I need to figure some things out." David stared at the screen. The words didn't quite register at first, like reading a language he'd once known but had forgotten. I need space. They'd had breakfast together this morning. She'd kissed him goodbye, quick peck, distracted but still, and told him good luck with the ceremony. She'd been on her phone, scrolling through Instagram while eating yogurt, planning her next post probably. But she'd seemed fine, normal, the same Chloe she'd been for the past 8 years of marriage. "Don't call me." The mayor finished his speech to polite applause. Elena nudged David forward. Someone handed him the oversized scissors. The red ribbon stretched across the entrance, bright against the glass facade. David's thumb hovered over the call button. "Don't call me." "Mr. Ross?" The mayor was gesturing for him to say a few words. David pocketed his phone and stepped to the microphone. 200 faces looked at him expectantly. The architecture students with their notebooks, the press with their cameras, Eleanor with her encouraging smile, all of them waiting for him to say something profound about the building behind him, about vision and community and the future. But all David could think about was that text message: "I need space." "Thank you, Mayor Williams," David heard himself say. His voice sounded normal, steady, even though his heart was hammering. This building represents 3 years of work, but more than that, it represents the idea that spaces can bring people together, that architecture at its best creates room for connection. Even as he said it, he thought about Chloe, about space, about connection, about the beach house, his beach house, the one he'd designed and built with his own hands 5 years ago before they were married, and how he'd given her the keys this morning, without a second thought. "Structures need breathing room," David continued, the words automatic now, part of his professional vocabulary, "but they also need support, balance. That's what we've tried to achieve here." Applause. The scissors bit through the ribbon. Cameras flashed. Eleanor hugged him. "Beautiful speech. You okay? You seem distracted." "I'm fine," David lied. His phone buzzed again. He walked away from the crowd just for a moment, just to check, and found a quiet corner near the loading dock where the construction debris was still piled. One new message, not from Chloe. "Mark. Hey brother, heading out of town for a few days. Business trip. Catch up when I'm back." Mark, his best friend since college, the brother he'd never had, the guy who'd been his roommate for 4 years, his best man at his wedding, his regular sailing partner. Mark, who was always borrowing money for business opportunities that never quite panned out. Mark, who'd sold exactly 3 houses in the past year and was barely keeping his real estate license active. Mark, who'd been acting weird lately, distant, avoiding David's calls. Mark, who was apparently going out of town. David looked at Chloe's message again. I need space. I'm going to the beach house for a while, then at Mark's, heading out of town for a few days. Something cold settled in David's stomach. No, it couldn't be. Chloe needed space. That was all. She'd been talking about feeling suffocated lately, about needing to find herself, about how being married to an architect meant always living in someone else's vision. She was going through something, a phase. She just needed time alone. Alone. David stared at the two messages side by side on his screen. The jackhammer in the distance stopped. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise. He thought about the beach house, 2 hours north, right on the coast. 3 bedrooms, open floor plan, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. He'd designed every inch of it himself, built most of it with his own hands. It was his sanctuary, his escape. He'd put the deed in an LLC for tax purposes, but it was his in every way that mattered. He'd given Chloe the keys without hesitation this morning, told her to take all the time she needed, filled the fridge yesterday with her favorite foods, rosé wine, organic vegetables, that expensive cheese she liked, being the good husband, the supportive partner, giving her the space she needed. Structures need breathing room, but they also need support. David's finger hovered over Mark's contact. Then he remembered, "Don't call me." He pocketed his phone and walked back to the ceremony, where Eleanor was giving interviews and the architecture students were taking photos, and everyone was celebrating the building he'd created. But David barely saw any of it. All he could think about was the beach house 2 hours north, where his wife had gone to find herself, and where his best friend had apparently gone on a business trip. If you've ever given someone space and they used it to betray you, hit that like button. David had woken up at 5:30 a.m. feeling good, actually good. The kind of good that came from honest work finally paying off. The Meridian Arts Center was finished. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was today. 3 years of late nights and client meetings and permit battles and contractor negotiations, all culminating in this. A building that would stand for generations. He'd gone for a run along the waterfront, 5 miles his usual route, and watched the sun come up over the marina where his sailboat was docked. The Cassiopeia. A 32-foot sloop he'd restored himself, plank by plank. Another project. Another structure that needed breathing room but also support. Chloe was still asleep when he got back, or at least pretending to be. The bedroom door was closed, which usually meant she was scrolling through her phone, probably Instagram, definitely not sleeping but not wanting to be disturbed either. David showered, dressed in the suit Elena had insisted he buy for the ceremony, charcoal grey Italian wool, too expensive but admittedly sharp, and went downstairs to make coffee. That's when Chloe appeared. She was wearing yoga pants and one of his old college t-shirts, hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup. She looked young like this, beautiful in a way that reminded him of when they'd first met, before the Instagram account, before the constant need for content and validation, and the perfect life carefully curated for strangers online. "Big day," she'd said, pouring herself coffee. "Big day," David agreed. "You nervous?" A little, excited mostly. She'd scrolled through her phone while drinking her coffee, always scrolling. Always somewhere else even when she was right there in the kitchen with him. "Hey," David had said, "can you put that down for a second?" Chloe looked up, slightly annoyed. "What? I want to say thank you for being patient with me these past 3 years. I know I've been distracted with the project, but it's done now. We can take that trip you wanted. Greece, remember? Or we could go sailing, just the 2 of us. Take the Cassiopeia down the coast for a week." Something had flickered across her face. Not happiness, something else. Guilt, maybe, or sadness. "That sounds nice," she'd said flatly. "Just nice?" "David, She'd set down her coffee cup. "Can we talk tonight, after your ceremony? I've been thinking about some things and we need to discuss some stuff." A cold feeling had started in David's chest. "What kind of stuff?" "Nothing bad, just life stuff, us stuff, but not now, not before your big day. Let's talk tonight." "Chloe." "Tonight, I promise. Go crush your ribbon-cutting thing. I'm proud of you." She'd kissed him, quick, perfunctory. and disappeared back upstairs. David had stood in the kitchen, coffee growing cold in his hand, trying to shake the feeling that something was wrong. But then Eleanor had called about last-minute ceremony details, and he'd gotten caught up in the day, and by the time he left for the site at noon, Chloe was gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Went to get some groceries. Good luck today. XOXO. The note was still there when David came home that evening, after the ceremony, after the congratulatory drinks with Elena and the team, after checking his phone 17 times for a message from Chloe that never came. The house was empty. The note sat on the counter next to her wedding ring. David met Chloe at a gallery opening. He'd been there because one of his buildings was featured in a photography exhibition, architectural studies, the way light moved through his designs. She'd been there because, honestly, David never quite figured out why Chloe had been there. She wasn't into architecture, she wasn't into art, but she'd been standing in front of a photograph of his work, and when he'd approached to introduce himself, she'd smiled. "Did you design this?" she'd asked. "I did." "It's beautiful. Like, actually beautiful. Not pretentious beautiful." He'd laughed. "There's a difference? In this world, always." She was 24 then, working as a marketing coordinator for a tech startup, living with 3 roommates in a cramped apartment downtown. She had big dreams about becoming an influencer, about building a brand, about turning her life into content. David had found it charming at first. The ambition, the energy, the way she saw the world as a series of moments to be captured and shared. He was 48, divorced 3 years, still recovering from a marriage that had ended because his ex-wife had gotten tired of playing second fiddle to his work. "So you love your buildings more than you love me," she'd said on her way out. It wasn't true, but it also wasn't entirely false. Chloe had seemed different. She'd seemed fascinated by his work, impressed by his success, excited about the life they could build together. They'd gotten married 18 months after meeting. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Mark had been his best man, of course, had given a speech about brotherhood and loyalty, and how David deserved happiness. Mark, who'd been divorced twice by then. Mark, who'd made a toast about finding the one, while looking at Chloe just a little too long. David had ignored it. Chalked it up to Mark being Mark. A little too friendly, a little too charming, a little too comfortable with everyone. "The brother I never had," David had said in his own speech that night. "My best friend for 30 years. The guy who knows all my secrets and still shows up anyway." Mark had laughed and raised his glass. "To loyalty," he'd said. Chloe had smiled and taken a selfie with both of them, posting it with the caption, "My husband and his best friend." Lucky me. Squad goals. Wedding day. Blessed David built the beach house in the summer after he and Chloe got married. It was supposed to be their retreat, a place to escape the city, to reconnect, to remember why they'd fallen in love. He'd found the land, a half-acre lot right on the coast, 2 hours north, and designed the house himself. Modern but warm. Glass walls overlooking the ocean. Open floor plan. 3 bedrooms. A workshop in the back where he could work on smaller projects, restore furniture, build things with his hands. He'd put the property in an LLC for tax reasons, his accountant's advice, but it was his in every way that mattered. His design, his vision, his sanctuary. Chloe had loved it at first. She'd posted dozens of photos, sunrise shots from the master bedroom, aesthetic flat lays on the kitchen counter, herself in a bikini on the private beach. Beach house Tatashi coastal living. Chak blessed Tatashi goals. But after the first few months, she'd stopped coming. "It's too isolated," she'd complained. "There's no cell service, I can't post anything. What's the point of being somewhere beautiful if no one sees it?" David had installed a cell signal booster, upgraded the Wi-Fi, made it so she could post from anywhere in the house. She'd come a few more times, always with her phone, always staging shots, always more interested in the content than the actual experience of being there. Eventually, David started going alone. Weekends when he needed to think. Times when a project was giving him trouble and he needed to step away. The beach house became his space, his escape, until this morning when Chloe had asked for the keys. "I need to get away for a while," she'd said. "Clear my head, figure some things out." "Figure what out?" David had asked. "Just life, us, everything. I feel like I'm suffocating, David. Like I can't breathe. Structures need breathing room, but they also need support. Take all the time you need," he'd said, "because that's what you did when you loved someone. You gave them space. You supported them. He'd even stocked the fridge for her, driven up yesterday after work to fill it with her favorite foods. Rosé wine, organic vegetables, that fancy cheese from the gourmet shop downtown that cost $28 a pound. Being the good husband, the generous partner, the fool. The first time David noticed something off was at Mark's birthday party. David had thrown it at his house in the city, the one he'd designed and built after his divorce before Chloe. Modern but comfortable. Space for entertaining. Mark had just turned 48 and was going through his second divorce, and David had wanted to cheer him up. Chloe had helped plan it, ordered the catering, decorated, made a Spotify playlist. She'd worn a dress that was slightly too revealing for a casual party, but looked amazing, and David had felt proud walking in with her. The party was good. 20 people, mostly David's architect friends, and a few of Mark's real estate contacts. Good food, good conversation, good music. But at some point, maybe an hour in, David had walked into the kitchen to get more ice and heard laughing from the back patio. Chloe's laugh, Mark's laugh, just the two of them, standing too close, heads bent together over Mark's phone, looking at something that was apparently hilarious. David had stood in the doorway watching them, the way Mark touched Chloe's arm while showing her whatever was on his screen, the way she leaned into him slightly, naturally, like they'd done this before. "What's so funny?" David had asked, walking over. They'd both jumped apart slightly. Mark had pocketed his phone. "Just some memes, real estate humor. You wouldn't get it. Try me." "Nah, it's stupid, inside joke kind of thing." Inside joke, between his wife and his best friend. David had let it go, told himself he was being paranoid. Chloe was friendly. Mark was charismatic. They were both extroverts who liked social media and memes and things David didn't particularly care about. It was natural they'd bond over that stuff. But after that night, he'd started noticing things. The way they texted each other. Not constantly, but enough that David noticed Chloe smiling at her phone, and when asked who it was, saying, "Oh, just Mark. He sent me this funny thing about..." And then, it didn't matter what. The thing was, what mattered was the frequency, the way they had inside jokes, references David didn't understand, a whole language between them that excluded him, the way Mark always seemed to be around, dropping by the house, joining them for dinner, suggesting group activities that somehow ended up being just the three of them. "The brother I never had," David kept telling himself, "my best friend." And Chloe was his wife. The woman he'd married, the woman who'd promised to love him. He'd trusted them both, that was the problem, really. David Ross, architect, designer of structures that required both space and support, had built his personal life on a foundation that turned out to be nothing but sand. David stood in his empty house, staring at Chloe's wedding ring on the kitchen counter. It sat next to the note she'd left that morning, went to get some groceries. "Good luck today, XOXA," which now felt like a particularly cruel joke. She hadn't gone to get groceries, she'd gone to pack. David walked upstairs to their bedroom. The closet was half empty. Her side of the bathroom counter was cleared. Her favorite toiletries gone. Her expensive skincare routine gone. The special pillow she needed for her neck. Gone. She'd planned this. While he'd been filling the fridge at the beach house, being the supportive husband, giving her space, she'd been packing, planning her escape. David sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out his phone. He opened the conversation with Mark. "Mark, hey brother, heading out of town for a few days, business trip. Catch up when I'm back?" The message had been sent at 2:15 p.m. 32 minutes before Chloe's text. David scrolled up through their message history. Normal stuff mostly. Sailing plans. "Did you catch the game? Want to grab a beer?" But looking at it now, with fresh eyes, David noticed the gaps. Periods where Mark went silent for days. Times when David had texted and Mark hadn't responded until much later with vague excuses. He opened Instagram. Chloe's profile was public. Of course it was. She needed the followers, the engagement, the validation from strangers. Her latest post was from this morning, a selfie in the car, caption reading, "Sometimes you need to lose yourself to find yourself. Taking time for me." Self-care. Me time nurtured growth. 247 likes already. Mark didn't have Instagram, at least not a public account, but David searched anyway. Nothing. He tried Facebook. Mark's profile was set to private, but his profile picture was recent. David clicked on it, zooming in. There, in the reflection of Mark's sunglasses in the photo, a woman, blonde, taking the picture. The photo was dated 3 weeks ago. David's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. "Hi, is this David? This is Sarah, your neighbor at the beach house. I don't mean to bother you, but I wanted to let you know there are people at your place, a blonde woman and a man. They've been there since around 4 p.m. I wouldn't normally mention it, but they've been pretty loud, music and laughing, and I wanted to make sure you knew about it. Hope everything's okay." David stared at the message. 4 p.m. 2 hours after Chloe had texted him. 2 hours after Mark had sent his business trip message. They were there together at his beach house. David stood up, grabbed his car keys, headed for the door, then stopped. "Don't call me," Chloe had said. Fine, he wouldn't call. He'd drive there, confront them, demand answers. David was halfway to his car when he stopped again. No. That's what they'd expect. The hurt husband driving 2 hours, showing up angry, making a scene. Chloe would cry. Mark would try to explain. They'd gaslight him, tell him he was overreacting, that it wasn't what it looked like. David walked back into his house and sat down at his desk. The desk where he'd designed the beach house. Every room, every detail, every system, including the smart home integration, the locks, the thermostat, the security cameras, the fridge, the sound system. All of it connected to an app on his phone, all of it controllable from anywhere. Smart homes are dangerous for dumb people, his contractor had joked during installation. David opened the app. The beach house systems loaded on his screen. Every room, every device, every control at his fingertips. He pulled up the security camera feeds, and there they were, Chloe and Mark, in his living room, on his couch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. Both of them laughing at something on Mark's phone. Both of them drinking David's wine. Both of them looking very comfortable, very familiar, very much not like this was the first time. David watched for 30 seconds. Then he closed the camera feed and opened the controls. Structures need breathing room, but they also need support. But what happens when the structure itself is rotten? What happens when the foundation is compromised? You don't try to save it, you tear it down. David's finger hovered over the master control panel. Then he smiled. Not a nice smile, not a happy smile. The smile of an architect who just realized he'd built the perfect trap, and two people he'd trusted with everything had walked right into it. David sat at his desk and opened the beach house security system on his laptop. The larger screen made it easier to see details, to catch things he might miss on his phone. The system had 4 cameras: front entrance, back deck, living room, and the master bedroom hallway. He'd installed them 2 years ago after a break-in scare at a neighbor's place. Chloe had complained they were creepy and Big Brother-ish, but David had insisted, for safety, for security, for evidence, as it turned out. He started with the front entrance camera, scrolling back to 4:13 p.m., right around when Sarah, his neighbor, said they'd arrived. There. Mark's Audi pulled into the driveway. Red, expensive, leased almost certainly because Mark never actually owned anything outright. The driver's door opened and Mark stepped out, wearing designer sunglasses and a polo shirt that was trying too hard to make 50 look like 35. He walked around to the passenger side and opened the door. Chloe stepped out, David's wife, wearing a sundress he'd never seen before, white, flowing, the kind of dress you wore when you wanted to look effortlessly beautiful for someone who mattered. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders. She was laughing at something Mark had said. Mark grabbed 2 suitcases from the trunk, not overnight bags. Suitcases. They walked to the front door together. Mark's hand found the small of Chloe's back. Casual, familiar, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. She leaned into him slightly. David's hands clenched into fists. At the door, Chloe pulled out the keys David had given her that morning. She unlocked it, pushed it open, turned to Mark and said something. David couldn't hear. The front camera didn't have audio, but he could read her lips. Welcome home. They disappeared inside, and David sat staring at the empty driveway on his screen. Welcome home. Not welcome to David's beach house, or welcome to the place my husband built. Just home, like it was theirs, like David didn't exist. He switched to the living room camera. The living room camera had audio. David had splurged on the upgraded system, 4K video, noise-canceling microphones, cloud storage. "Are you paranoid?" Chloe had said when he'd installed it. "Who's going to break into a beach house in the middle of nowhere?" Apparently his wife and his best friend, but they'd used a key, so technically not breaking and entering, technically just betrayal. David rewound to 4:17 p.m. and pressed play. The video showed Chloe and Mark entering the living room. Mark set down the suitcases. Chloe walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, arms spread wide. "God, I forgot how beautiful this place is," she said. Her voice came through the speakers on David's laptop, clear and bright. "Ross always did have good taste," Mark said. "Well, mostly good taste." Chloe turned around. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just—" Mark walked up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "He's a good guy, great architect, terrible at seeing what's right in front of him." "Don't." Chloe's voice was soft. "I feel guilty enough." "You shouldn't. You've been unhappy for years." "I know, but nothing. You deserve to be happy, Chloe. You deserve someone who actually sees you, not someone who's always thinking about buildings and structures and his next project." David's jaw tightened. On screen, Chloe turned in Mark's arms and kissed him. Not a peck, not tentative. A real kiss. The kind that spoke of practice and familiarity and history. They broke apart, and Chloe laughed. "I can't believe we're really doing this. I can't believe we're here. We should have done this a year ago. I wasn't ready a year ago. And now? Now I'm ready." I texted him, told him I need space. By the time he figures anything out, if he figures anything out, we'll be long gone. David's blood ran cold. Long gone. This wasn't a weekend fling. This wasn't a momentary lapse. They were planning to leave, to disappear together. Mark walked to the kitchen, David's kitchen, with the custom cabinets he'd built by hand, and opened the fridge. Holy shit! He stocked this place like he was preparing for a siege. "Look at this." Mark pulled out the expensive cheese David had bought. $28 a pound manchego. Your husband really went all out. "Ex-husband," Chloe said. "Soon." "Right, ex-husband." Mark grabbed the bottle of rosé. "Should we feel bad about drinking his wine?" "He won't even notice it's gone. You know David, he's probably already moved on to his next project. Some museum or library or whatever. We're just a footnote in his architectural portfolio." Mark popped the cork. "To footnotes, then. And to freedom." They clinked glasses. David closed the laptop. His hands were shaking. Not with sadness, not with hurt. With rage. Pure, crystalline rage. Then he started downloading files. Every security camera video from the past 3 months. He scrolled through hours of footage, looking for evidence of previous visits. Had they been doing this for a while? Had they been meeting at his beach house, drinking his wine, sleeping in his bed while he worked late in the city? He found footage from 6 weeks. Ago, a Wednesday afternoon. Chloe's car in the driveway. Alone at first. Then 30 minutes later, Mark's Audi pulling in. They'd stayed for 4 hours. David downloaded the file. He found footage from 2 months ago. Same pattern. Chloe arriving first, Mark following. 3 months ago. Same thing. They'd been doing this for at least 3 months, maybe longer. David created subfolders, video evidence, audio transcripts, text messages. He pulled up his phone records. He had access to Chloe's phone plan since she was on his account. Scrolled through her text history. Hundreds of messages between Chloe and Mark. Thousands, maybe. He couldn't access the content. The messages were encrypted, but he could see the frequency, the volume, the pattern all day, every day, while David was at work, while he was in meetings, while he was designing buildings and managing projects and being the responsible adult who paid the bills and kept the lights on. His wife and his best friend had been texting constantly. David took screenshots, added them to the folder. He opened his bank records, searched for charges at restaurants he hadn't been to, hotels he hadn't stayed at, purchases he didn't recognize. There, 3 months ago, a charge at the Meridian Hotel downtown. 387 the night David had been in Seattle for a conference. He'd asked Chloe about it when he'd seen the charge. She'd said it was a girls' spa day with her friends. He'd believed her. Fool. David added the bank statements to the evidence folder. He worked methodically, coldly, building his case like he was designing a building. Foundation first, load-bearing walls, then the details. Every piece of evidence carefully documented, organized, cross-referenced. An hour passed, then 2. The folder grew to 4.7 gigabytes. Videos of them together, audio of them mocking him, financial records showing the affairs had been going on for months, text logs showing the frequency of contact, everything he needed for the divorce, everything he needed to destroy them both. David leaned back in his chair and looked at the folder on his screen. Demolition Project, Ross Beach House. Structures need breathing room, but they also need support. But this structure, this marriage, this friendship, this life he'd built, had no support, no foundation, just lies and betrayal and 2 people who'd taken his generosity and twisted it into their own private joke. You couldn't renovate a structure this compromised. You could only demolish it. David's phone buzzed. A notification from the beach house security system. Motion detected. Master bedroom. He opened the camera feed. Chloe and Mark were in his bedroom. His bed. The bed he'd built from reclaimed wood, sanded smooth, finished by hand. They were laughing about something. Chloe was showing Mark her phone, some video, some meme. They looked happy, comfortable, like they belonged there. David watched for 10 seconds. Then he opened the smart home control app. His finger hovered over the master bedroom controls. Temperature, lighting, door locks, window blinds, sound system, all of it at his command. Smart homes are dangerous for dumb people. David had built this house, every system, every circuit, every line of code. He knew exactly how it worked, and he knew exactly how to make it turn against them. He almost did it right then. Almost locked them in the bedroom and cranked the heat to 95 degrees. Almost blasted the sound system at maximum volume. Almost turned their romantic getaway into a waking nightmare. But no, that would be too quick, too simple. David closed the app and stood up, walked to his garage, looked at the tools hanging on the pegboard wall, hammers and saws and pry bars, all of them organized by size and function. He grabbed a tire iron, heavy, cold, solid. He could drive there right now, 2 hours, be there by midnight, walk in and what? Hit Mark? Scream at Chloe? Break things? Make a scene? That's what angry husbands did in movies. That's what people expected. David Ross wasn't most people. He was an architect, and architects didn't destroy things in fits of rage. They demolished them with precision, with planning, with cold, calculated efficiency. David hung the tire iron back on the pegboard. He walked back to his office and sat down at his desk, opened the smart home app, and started planning. David made himself a drink, scotch, neat, the expensive bottle he saved for celebrating completed projects, and sat at his desk staring at the beach house control panel. The rage was still there, burning, acidic, but underneath it something colder was forming. Calculation. Strategy. The architect's mind taking over from the hurt husband's heart. David opened a blank document and started typing. 4.7 gigabytes of evidence collected, video, audio, financial records, proof of adultery, sufficient for no-fault divorce, evidence of fraud, joint credit cards used for affair. David read through his plan, adjusted a few details, added notes. This was better than showing up with a tire iron. This was surgical. He opened the beach house camera feed again. 11:03 p.m. now. Chloe and Mark were back in the living room, sitting on the couch. They'd changed into comfortable clothes. Chloe in one of David's old t-shirts, that detail made his jaw clench. Mark in sweatpants. They were watching something on the TV, some romantic comedy probably, drinking more of David's wine, looking perfectly at home. The audio feed picked up their conversation. Can't believe how easy this was, Chloe was saying. I thought he'd figure it out. He's usually so observant with his projects. Yeah, but we're not a project, Mark said. We're just background noise. David's too focused on his buildings to notice real life happening around him. Still, I expected him to call to come charging up here, something. He won't. He's too controlled for that, too rational. He'll probably just accept it. Sign the divorce papers quietly. Move on to his next building. Chloe laughed. God, that's depressing. 8 years of marriage, and he probably won't even fight for me. Would you want him to? No. God, no. I'm just saying, it's kind of sad, you know, that he cares so little. David's hand tightened around his scotch glass. Cares so little. He'd filled her fucking fridge. He'd given her space. He'd been the supportive husband while she planned to run away with his best friend. And she thought he cared too little. Mark shifted on the couch, pulling Chloe closer. Forget about David. This is about us now. Our future. We can go anywhere we want. Do anything we want. You can build your influencer brand without him hovering. I can finally get out of this dead-end real estate career. We'll figure it out together. With what money? Chloe asked. I'm broke. You're broke. David has everything locked up in his LLCs and his projects. The beach house is worth at least $2 million, maybe more. David would never sell it. He might, in the divorce. If we play it right, you could get half of everything, including this place. Chloe sat up. You think? I know a good divorce lawyer. We'll make sure you get what you deserve. What she deserves, David thought. He opened the smart home app, found the living room controls and smiled. David decided to start small. Just a warning shot. A little reminder that the beach house wasn't the sanctuary they thought it was. He opened the thermostat controls, currently set to 72 degrees. Comfortable, perfect for a cool October evening by the ocean. David dragged the slider down, 65 degrees, then 60, then 55. He hit apply. On the camera feed, nothing happened for about 30 seconds. Then Chloe shifted on the couch. Is it getting cold in here? She asked. Little bit, Mark said. Where's the thermostat? In the hallway, I think. Mark got up and walked out of frame. David switched to the hallway camera and watched Mark find the thermostat on the wall. He touched the screen, frowned. It says 55 degrees, Mark called out. That can't be right. Well, turn it up. Mark tapped the screen. Nothing happened. He tapped again, harder. Still nothing. I think it's locked, Mark said, coming back to the living room. The controls won't respond. Locked? Why would it be locked? I don't know. Maybe David has it on some kind of automated system. Well, can you override it? I'm a real estate agent, Chloe, not an IT specialist. David smiled and took another sip of scotch. Chloe got up and tried the thermostat herself. David watched her jab at it repeatedly, getting more frustrated with each failed attempt. This is ridiculous, she muttered, returning to the couch. Get a blanket or something. Mark grabbed the throw blanket from the back of the couch, the hand-woven one David's mother had made, another detail that made him want to put his fist through a wall, and wrapped it around both of them. Better? Mark asked. Not really, it's fucking freezing. We'll just go to bed early, use the blankets in the bedroom. Good idea. They started to get up. David clicked over to the bedroom controls and locked the door. Mark reached the master bedroom first, turned the handle. Nothing. Chloe, the door won't open. What do you mean it won't open? I mean it's locked. From the inside somehow. That doesn't make sense. There's no lock on this door. But there was. David had installed smart locks on every door in the house, electronic deadbolts that could be controlled remotely. For security, for convenience, for revenge, as it turned out. Chloe tried the handle herself, pulled harder. What the fuck? Why won't it open? Maybe it's stuck. Doors don't just get stuck, Mark. This is a brand new house. Well, it's not opening. We'll have to sleep in one of the other bedrooms. They walked down the hall to bedroom 2. Mark tried the handle. Locked. Bedroom 3. Also locked. Okay, this is weird, Mark said. His voice had an edge now, anxiety creeping in. All the bedrooms are locked. Maybe there's something wrong with the smart home system, Chloe said. David had everything automated. Maybe it's malfunctioning. Malfunctioning in a way that locks every bedroom at the exact same time? That's one hell of a coincidence. They stood in the hallway, both of them starting to realize something was wrong. David watched them on the camera feed and felt a cold satisfaction spreading through his chest. Time to turn up the pressure. He opened the lighting controls and started flicking switches. Living room lights, off. Kitchen lights, off. Hallway lights, off. The house plunged into darkness except for the ambient moonlight coming through the windows. "What the fuck?" Chloe's voice was sharp with panic now. Mark pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight. The breaker must have tripped. All the lights at once? I'll check the breaker box. It's in the garage, right? I think so. David pulled up the garage controls and locked that door too. Mark tried the garage door handle, pulled harder. This one's locked too. Mark, this isn't normal. Something's wrong. Yeah, no shit, something's wrong. David's smart house is having a meltdown. Or David is having a meltdown, David thought. Depends on your perspective. He opened the sound system controls. The beach house had speakers in every room. High-end Sonos system, perfectly integrated, controlled by app. David scrolled through his music library, found the perfect choice, hit play. The opening riff of AC/DC's Back in Black exploded through every speaker in the house at maximum volume. Chloe screamed. Mark dropped his phone. The music was deafening. David had installed commercial-grade speakers because he liked listening to classical music while he worked, and he'd wanted perfect acoustics. At full volume, it was concert-level loud. Mark was shouting something, but David couldn't hear him over the music. Chloe had her hands over her ears. Both of them were looking around wildly, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from, how to stop it. Mark ran to the living room, found the main sound system control panel on the wall, started jabbing at buttons. Nothing happened. The music kept blasting. David let it play for 2 full minutes, long enough to make them truly uncomfortable, short enough that the neighbors probably wouldn't complain. The nearest house was a quarter-mile away anyway. Then he stopped it. Sudden silence. Mark and Chloe stood in the dark living room, breathing hard. "What the fuck?" Chloe's voice was shaking. "What the fuck is happening?" "I don't know. Some kind of system malfunction." "That's not a malfunction, Mark. Lights don't turn off, doors don't lock, and music doesn't start playing all at maximum volume because of a fucking malfunction." "Then what do you think it is?" Chloe was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, "I think David knows." "That's paranoid." "Is it? Think about it. He built this house. He installed all these systems. He controls everything from his phone. There's no way he could know we're here." "Sarah." "What?" "The neighbor, Sarah. She's friends with David. What if she told him?" Mark's face went pale in the moonlight. "Even if she did, he wouldn't. He's not that kind of guy. He's too rational, too controlled." David laughed out loud in his empty office. "Too controlled." "Right." On screen, Chloe pulled out her phone. "I'm calling him." "Don't." "I have to. If he knows, we need to explain. We need to—" David's phone rang. Chloe calling. He let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times, then declined the call. On the camera feed, Chloe stared at her phone. "He rejected my call. He never rejects my calls. Maybe he's asleep. It's barely midnight. David never goes to bed before 1. She tried again. David declined again. "He knows," Chloe said. "Oh my God, he knows. Mark, we need to leave. We need to leave right now." Okay. We'll just go, get in the car and—" They headed for the front door. David pulled up the door controls and locked it. Mark yanked on the front door handle. "It's locked! The fucking front door is locked!" "Use your key!" "I don't have a key. You have the key." Chloe fumbled in her purse, found the keys David had given her that morning, shoved one into the deadbolt. It wouldn't turn. The smart lock had overridden the mechanical lock. "It's not working." Chloe was full on panicking now. "The key won't turn, Mark. The key won't turn. Try the back door." They ran through the dark house, Mark's phone flashlight bobbing wildly, to the back door that opened onto the deck. David locked it before they got there. Mark tried the handle anyway, pulled, slammed his shoulder against it. Nothing. "We're locked in," Chloe said. Her voice had gone quiet, defeated. "David locked us in his house." That's illegal. He can't just lock us in. He built the house, Mark. He owns it. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. David pulled up his phone and opened the camera app. He could trigger the two-way audio from here. He could talk to them right now, could tell them exactly what he thought of their betrayal. But no, not yet. First, one more thing. He pulled up the contacts and dialed. 911, what's your emergency? Yes, hi. I'd like to report trespassers at my property. David kept his voice calm, professional. 2 people broke into my beach house. They're still there. I'm watching them on my security cameras. What's the address, sir? David gave it. Are the trespassers armed? I don't believe so, but they've been there for several hours. They've been drinking. I want them removed. We'll send units right away. Are you at the property now, sir? No, I'm in the city, but I have remote access to the security system. I can see them on camera. Okay, officers are en route. Should be there in about 15 minutes. Thank you. David hung up. Then he opened the beach house control panel and unlocked the back door. Just the back door, the one that led to the deck, where they'd have nowhere to go except outside, where the police would find them. Mark discovered the back door was unlocked about 3 minutes after David's call to 911. Chloe, the back door opened. What? I don't know, it's unlocked now. Come on, let's go. They ran outside onto the deck. The October night was cold. David had kept the thermostat at 55 for almost an hour, and the house had lost all its heat. Both of them were shivering. Where's your car? Chloe asked. Front driveway. We need to go around through the yard? Unless you have a better idea. They started down the deck stairs toward the beach. David waited until they were halfway down. Then he triggered the deck lights, bright LED floods that illuminated the entire backyard, turning night into day. Mark and Chloe froze, blinded. What the? David opened the TV controls. The beach house had a 75-inch TV in the living room, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He'd never bothered closing the curtains when he was alone there. Who would see? The nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile away, but Mark and Chloe could see it from the deck. David triggered the TV to turn on, found the AirPlay controls, and started a FaceTime call from his laptop. The TV screen flickered to life, showing his face in high definition, 8 feet tall, staring down at them from inside the house. Mark and Chloe turned around slowly. Hi there, David said. His voice came through the outdoor speakers, calm and cold. Having a nice evening? Chloe's face went white. David, don't. Just don't. I've been watching you for the past 3 hours. I've heard every word. I know everything. It's not what it looks like, Mark started. David laughed. Actually laughed. Really? That's what you're going with? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife and my best friend have been fucking around in my beach house. It looks like you've been planning to run away together. It looks like you've been doing this for months while I was working to pay for everything you're currently enjoying. David, please, let me explain. Chloe was crying now. Real tears, but David felt nothing watching them. Explain what? That you're bored? That I'm too focused on work? That Mark makes you feel special? David's voice stayed level, controlled. I heard all of that already, through the speakers, the smart speakers I installed for convenience. Funny how convenient they turned out to be. You had no right to spy on us. Mark's face was red, angry now, caught and cornered and trying to turn it around. That's an invasion of privacy. Privacy? In my house? The house I designed and built and own through my LLC? The house you're currently trespassing in? David smiled. Speaking of which, the police should be here in about 5 minutes. I called them 20 minutes ago. Reported 2 trespassers. I didn't mention you were my wife and best friend. I figured that would just complicate things. You called the police? Chloe's voice rose to a shriek. David, that's insane. We're not trespassers. Actually, you are. The property is owned by Ross Development LLC. Not by me, personally. You have no legal right to be there. The keys I gave you this morning. Those were given under false pretenses, which you've now proven by bringing Mark. So yes, legally, you're trespassers. Mark started backing toward the stairs. We're leaving right now. You can't keep us here. I'm not keeping you anywhere. You're free to go. The back door's unlocked. The front door's unlocked. Walk around the house, get in your car, drive away. David paused. Of course, you'll have to explain to the police why you're leaving in such a hurry when they arrive in 4 minutes now. Sirens in the distance. Faint but growing louder. Chloe heard them. Oh God, David, please, don't do this. We can talk about this. We can figure this out. We're already figured out, Chloe. I spent the evening building a very detailed folder called Demolition Project. 4.7 gigabytes of evidence. Videos of you two together over the past 3 months. Audio of you mocking me. Financial records showing the affair. Text logs. Bank statements. Everything I need for the divorce. Divorce? Chloe's voice cracked. What did you think was going to happen? You texted me that you needed space. You took off your wedding ring. You came to my beach house with my best friend. You were planning to run away together. David leaned closer to the camera. Did you really think I'd just accept that? Sign some papers quietly? Move on? You're too controlled for drama, Mark said bitterly. That's what you always said, that you were above all that emotional bullshit. I am above drama, David said. This isn't drama. This is demolition. Controlled, precise, efficient. Just like I design my buildings. The sirens were closer now. Maybe 2 minutes away. Chloe was sobbing. David, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. We both did, but please don't do this, please. David looked at his wife, his soon-to-be ex-wife, crying on his deck, and felt absolutely nothing. The rage had burned itself out hours ago. The hurt had crystallized into cold certainty. There was nothing left but the architect's clinical assessment of a failed structure. Structures need breathing room, David said quietly, but they also need support. This marriage had neither. It was built on lies and maintained by my ignorance. You don't renovate a structure like that. You demolish it and build something better. Red and blue lights flashed in the driveway, car doors slamming, radio chatter. That's the police, David said. I recommend you cooperate. Tell them the truth, that you're here without permission, that the property owner asked you to leave, that you're going peacefully. David, goodbye, Chloe. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. Mark, David focused on his former best friend. You're done in this town, in our social circle, in business. I know every architect, every developer, every contractor worth knowing. By tomorrow morning, they'll all know what you did. Good luck selling houses when no one trusts you. You vindictive piece of... David ended the call. The TV went black. The outdoor lights stayed on, illuminating Mark and Chloe standing on the deck as 2 police officers came around the corner of the house, hands on their belts, assessing the situation. David watched through the security cameras as the officers questioned them, as Chloe tried to explain through tears, as Mark gestured angrily, as both of them realized that David had set this up perfectly, legally, with no way out. The officers didn't arrest them. Technically, they hadn't committed a crime serious enough for arrest, but they did escort them off the property. Watched as Mark and Chloe got in the Audi, followed them to make sure they actually left. David sat in his office, watching the red taillights disappear down the coastal road. Then he closed his laptop, finished his scotch, and finally, allowed himself to feel the weight of what had just happened. 8 years of marriage gone, 30 years of friendship gone. Everything he'd built with Chloe, every memory, every moment, demolished as thoroughly as any building he'd ever torn down. But unlike Chloe and Mark, David understood something fundamental about demolition. You didn't tear things down out of spite. You tore them down to make room for something better. And David Ross was very, very good at building things. 6 weeks later, the divorce papers were signed on a Tuesday morning in November. Chloe didn't contest anything. She couldn't, not with 4.7 gigabytes of evidence sitting in her lawyer's inbox. The adultery, the planning, the months of deception captured in high-definition video and crystal-clear audio. She got nothing. No alimony, no share of the beach house, no claim to David's business or his retirement accounts or the sailboat or anything else. She walked out of the lawyer's office with exactly what she'd brought into the marriage. Nothing. David sold the beach house 3 weeks later, listed it on a Wednesday, had offers by Friday, closed the following Monday. $2.3 million. He didn't haggle, didn't negotiate, just wanted it gone. The place was tainted now. Every room held memories of betrayal. The kitchen where he'd stocked the fridge, the deck where he'd confronted them, the bedroom where they'd... No. He didn't think about that anymore. The new owners were a retired couple from Portland. Kind people. They'd take care of it. That was enough. Mark's real estate career imploded within 2 weeks. David had made 3 phone calls, to the head of the local real estate board, to the managing broker at Mark's firm, and to the president of the Downtown Business Association. He hadn't said much, just mentioned what happened. Let the truth do the work. Mark lost his license for ethics violations. Something about misusing his position to seduce a client's wife. The details didn't matter. What mattered was that Mark was done. Finished. Last David heard, he'd moved 2 states away, selling insurance or timeshares or something equally desperate. Chloe tried to salvage her influencer dreams. She posted a tearful video about toxic relationships and finding yourself and choosing happiness. It got torn apart in the comments. Someone had leaked the security footage, not David, probably one of the cops or their friends, and suddenly everyone knew the real story. Her follower count dropped by 70% in a week. She was living in a studio apartment now, working retail. Her Instagram reduced to sad selfies with filters that couldn't hide the defeat in her eyes. David felt nothing watching her downfall. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just the clean emptiness of a demolition completed. The Cassiopeia cut through the water like a knife through silk. David stood at the helm, one hand on the wheel, feeling the boat respond to every adjustment. The January wind was cold and clean, carrying the salt smell of the ocean and nothing else. No perfume, no lies, no betrayal, just water and wind and the simple physics of a well-built boat moving through its element. He'd been sailing alone for 3 months now. Every weekend, sometimes during the week if he could get away from work. Just him and the ocean and the quiet. People asked if he was lonely. He wasn't. Loneliness required missing something you'd lost. But David hadn't lost anything real. He'd demolished something false. There was a difference. The sun was setting, turning the water gold and orange and red. David adjusted the sail, felt the boat respond, smiled. Structures need breathing room, but they also need support. For 30 years he'd been the support while everyone else took the breathing room. Chloe with her space. Mark with his borrowed money and borrowed friendship. Everyone leaning on David while David held everything up alone. Not anymore. The Cassiopeia was a structure that supported itself. Balanced, independent, free. David was learning to be the same. The wind picked up. The boat heeled slightly. David adjusted course and felt the immediate response, cause and effect, honest and clean. Behind him, the coast disappeared into the gathering dark. Ahead, nothing but open water. David Ross, architect, sailor, survivor, pointed his boat toward the horizon and didn't look back. Some storms destroy you. Some storms just clear away the structures that were never meant to stand. And when the storm passes, you don't rebuild the same thing. You build something better, something true, something that's finally completely yours. If you've ever had to demolish a life you thought was solid to build something better, if you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, if you've ever found peace in the wreckage, hit that subscribe button. Remember, structures need breathing room, but they also need support. Make sure yours is built on truth, not lies. And when the storm comes, and it will come, make sure your foundation can hold. The horizon is waiting.